o'clock. On my clock, I will open the meeting this evening once I hear from everybody they're ready. Good? Okay. Good evening. This is the Southwest Vermont Supervisory Union Board of Directors meeting Wednesday, March 28th, 2018. I am opening the meeting tonight because this is reorganization of the board. And let me get my nomination sheet out here. And I have no new members here that everyone here can confirm that they have been sworn in for office. Thank you.
We have an alternate that's in the audience. John Leon.
Okay. Are there any other nominations?
Close.
Motion to close the nominations, second to close?
Second.
Second to close. Nominations are closed. You only have one candidate, so we can, do you wish to elect by acclamation? Yes?
Yes. So moved.
All in favor of Nelson Brunel as chair, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? At this time, I will turn the meeting over for the election of other officers.
Congratulations.
Congratulations, Nelson.
When you accept positions like this, you always have to wonder whether it's the right thing or the wrong thing, or what are you getting yourself into? But I'm glad we accept and hope I can only meet what you wish me to accomplish. Okay, with that said, we need a nomination for vice chair. Last-
Second.
Okay. Okay. So I have any other nominations for vice chair?
Take Fran. I'll decline, thank you.
Okay. Any others? With that said, we'll move to nominate Leon. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Done. Now we need somebody to be clerk.
Take Fran.
I'll second that.
Any other nominations for clerk? No. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Done. Okay. Okay, with that, I'll move forward with the meeting. Is there anybody here for public comment?
You want to approve the agenda?
You want to go over?
Oh,
Yeah,
yes, I better do the, yes.
please.
If I can move my screen, I would do that.
What about committees? You gonna do that some other
I'll do
time?
that, I'll take and send out something to do with committees. If anybody is interested, please send me a notice of what you're interested in, and then I'll appoint, and I'll do that before our next meeting.
Can I go
On that, Nelson.
Sure.
We're due for an administrators negotiation meeting on the 5th, which is next week, so
Anybody that is currently nominated to that position should go forward.
Until 10, that's right.
Okay, stay where they are, stay until, you know, I probably won't nominate anybody different unless somebody's gonna beat me up and want it anyway.
I can't make it on the 5th, so.
Okay. Okay. Do you have the agenda?
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda.
Yeah, as written. Second that, unless, yeah,
John beat you to it.
okay.
Is that a motion you guys made?
Yeah,
Okay,
right.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay. Okay. Public comment? No public comment? Finance operation related items? Treasury report for February?
Second.
Any discussion on it? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Request for proposal of telephone service and wireless infrastructure?
Second.
Second,
Any
that
discussion
was,
on that?
it says telephone services, but then the person that they are going to nominate and approve is First Light of Williston, Vermont, in that, for action. You want to do that?
Yep, so Frank is here to talk on that if you have questions.
Yeah, hi. There were two things here. One with the telephone service was, the First Light was to put in a backup service to avoid any downtime like we experienced last month. Excuse me, when Fairpoint went down and we didn't have, we had very sketchy internet service for close to 3 weeks, and we lost telephone service for a couple days in 4 of our buildings. And so this was to install backup service and get us right back up online and to avoid that happening anytime in the future. Any questions beyond that?
That's the telephone, that's the 21,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions, comments? Okay, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Procedure for executing contracts, action requested?
No, wireless.
Wireless.
Instruction. Wire, instruction. Here, Frank will do the same thing for that. Is that correct?
Oh, the wireless, oh, you want the both of them? All right, go ahead. You
Sure.
moved on both, you voted already.
This was, do you need to vote on it? Do you need me to explain anything?
Yeah, explain it.
Okay, so we're updating the wireless infrastructure so that all the Wi-Fi units are on the same page. We did an RFP, we got 3 bids. The bid that we chose was from E+ Technologies. We worked with them before, and they've done fine by us. And their bid was about half, 60% maybe of the next lowest bid. So it was pretty much no-brainer.
Okay, anything else you need to know?
No, I had it all down. I just wanted for the public to make sure that they heard it and saw it and
Okay.
out there and have Frank's voice on it.
Okay,
Was this, was this budgeted for? I mean, the funds are not unexpected. This is not an unexpected expenditure?
No, this is in my tech budget.
okay. Any other questions? Okay, I already had you move on the telephone service, the wireless infrastructure. Get a motion and a second for that? You want to do them separate?
So move.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Procedure for executing contracts.
Second.
Any discussion on this?
What is it exactly?
Renee?
Based on what happened at the Mount Anthony meeting last week, I took the motion back to legal and brought up the concerns that were raised by members of the MAU board. We should back up a little bit further.
Go back a little bit more about why we're doing this.
So by statute, the only person at the present time that has the authority to execute contracts on behalf of the SU is the board chair. Through an audit that we had with the AOE and even discussing with our auditors, they've asked who else has the authority to sign contracts, because technically a purchase order, as simple as a purchase order is a type of contract. We have thousands of them already this year in Mount Anthony and in the SU, and they have my signature on them. We also have, agreements that we have with consultants that come in and provide professional development. So things that are on more of a day-to-day operations, we just want to make sure that the board is giving the superintendent or his designee as in myself, the authority to sign contracts on a day-to-day kind of basis. The language that we had prior was pretty broad. So in talking with legal, we're asking that the board authorize the superintendent or designee to execute on behalf of the SU purchase orders, agreements for consulting services, grant agreements, and any other contracts arising affecting the routine operation of the SU. And then the motion would go on to say that the superintendent or designee shall not execute any contracts resulting from a public bid process, any employment agreements, and any long-term contracts without express authority from the board.
You've heard what they're looking to have us accept. Is there a motion to do that? Now that we've heard-
It's already on the floor.
We made a motion,
It's
second.
already on the floor.
We were
It's on
just
the-
discussing it.
This
But I have another question.
Yeah,
On things that the board is, the chair is permitted, should we have a secondary for the chair, like the vice chair?
That's what I was gonna ask, that the slate that we normally have, do that.
Right, because we normally have the chair and the vice chair.
okay, let's take this and then,
Well, that's all under the same thing.
yeah, and take, well, you want to bundle that in with the same,
Now, that should be separate. That's a separate issue.
It's not a separate, it's
not.
got to do with contracts.
yeah.
But your vice chair might execute employment contracts, so you may want to do it separately because this motion excludes.
Excludes
Okay.
employment.
But the
Right,
chair and the vice chair both do the same thing in the absence, that's all. And so it shouldn't be a separate thing, is what
All right,
John is
so-
saying.
Okay, so I'll make a motion for the superintendent and his designee
As read.
as read.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Make a motion to the chair and the vice chair for other contracts.
Second.
Okay.
any further discussion on that?
Is that, I mean, I know we've done this before, is this something we usually do at this organizational meeting? Or is it something we do in the summer?
Usually we do it in June,
It-
because you're not gonna meet in July.
Right.
So
Yeah.
we take a vote to authorize the chair and vice chair to sign contracts, but there really is no right or wrong time to do it.
Just in case there's something between now and June. Okay. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, let's take care of the contracts. Moving on to consent agenda. So moved.
Second.
Second it?
Any discussion on any of the items under the consent agenda? None heard, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nays? Okay, policy. We'll let you look down these.
Okay.
Leon.
You got policy 2600, superintendent evaluation and review is up for adoption. Get a motion for that?
Second. Okay, any discussion on it? This, you were making corrections to this to match his contract?
We made the corrections to make sure that we gave clear directions to this board that no later than September, that they should meet and plan the course of actions for the evaluations of the superintendent for the rest of the remaining of the year. And laid all of those things out in there.
Super.
Yep.
And it's all based on the superintendent's hire date, right?
Well, it has wiggle room for that, but we're saying, and.
Right, but it's not like this, by this date, it's
No.
whatever his or her
Right.
contract date is, it backs up from there.
Right, that has, and all, what it's, that's true, John. And what we're saying is when we meet in August or September, we want to plan the course of action based on whatever out here and start to move from there.
So we can
Okay.
meet the
Right.
requirements. Okay. Any other discussion on this? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Next one, Leon.
The next one, 3200, emergency closing. Adoption.
I didn't dissent to that.
Oh, you have
no.
abstained? Okay, got one abstention. Any,
No, I'm voting against.
no? Was it a no?
Yep.
Okay, no, any abstentions? No, all right.
Okay, you ready? The next policy is number 3200, is the emergency closing. And in there, we actually gave the rights to the superintendent designee that closing the school may occur depending on certain circumstances and so forth along that line. That's basically what that policy addresses.
So moved.
Get a second.
Second.
Any more discussion?
So is this a new policy or is it a change? And if so, what's the change?
We changed one word, which was health problems. We changed to health risks.
In emergency closings?
Yes,
Okay. Health problems to health risks? Got it.
Right.
problems just didn't sound very good.
Right.
Other issues? Other concerns? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Abstentions, nays? Okay.
The next policy is immunization, policy 5110, and what we did here, so that everybody, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry. And then when we do a discussion.
Okay.
Okay.
Go ahead.
It's been moved and seconded. One word was removed from this policy, and that was moral in there, that it took away the word moral and didn't allow people to opt out of their responsibility for moral reasons. That's all.
That's what it said, not philosophical? No, I thought it was the philosophical one that got canned
Any
by the state.
other discussions on this?
Interesting.
Philosophical or otherwise? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, any nays, abstentions? Okay. Superintendent report.
Good evening, everyone. Congratulations to the new board chair and vice chair. There was a question at our last board meeting about audits and where they are on timeline. I know Renee sent an email out to the board chairs, but I'd like her to give an update so that everyone, including the public, can hear on where we are with our audits.
We have 4 finalized as of today. We received our first draft on March 9th, and then the other ones slowly trickled in, with the final ones, I think, coming in on March 15th, if I'm not mistaken. Took my staff about a week to go through, and there were a number of corrections that we picked up. So we've been working with the auditing team on correcting those. So we got 4 of them back today. We've accepted those drafts. We're still waiting for 3 more, and we were promised that we would have them all today, but they are required to be submitted to the state by March 31st, and that will certainly happen. So
Okay.
that's where we are.
Thank you. The other question that came up under public comment at last month's meeting was concerning balances in our grants. And so it was from page 6 in our annual report. So I have for you a copy of page 6. Now, the bulk of these balances come from special education and from some of our title grants. So I asked Assistant Superintendent Dr. Leaf to come tonight to speak to those. We also have Kate Abbott here. I don't know if you're speaking on any of these. No. And Wendy Pierce, our Director of Special Education, I know is speaking on it, but when I saw Kate sitting back there, am I missing something? So if Donna, moral support. That's always good to have.
You sure you didn't mean philosophical?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to just have a few words about grants. It's a very complicated process, and I just wanted to sort of help clarify a little bit about the process in 5 minutes or less. So the list that you were given, I believe that those are grant allocation numbers. And it starts with federal funds being allocated to the state, and then the state allocates them to the schools, and then they give us a figure for what they are willing to allocate. But that is not the money that we actually receive. We have to then, from that allocation, which we are always unsure of the number until sometime mid-summer. So we have to try to anticipate what those numbers will be in terms of our staffing and all of the services that we fund with the grants in order to write a grant application. And our grant application has to align with our continuous improvement plans in all of our schools. And our grants may only fund what is supplemental to any of our programs. We cannot supplant. That means we cannot pay for grant, we may not use grant funds to pay for anything that the schools are responsible to be funding or that they have funded in the past. So we are really only allowed to do supplemental services. So for instance, much of our title grants are for funding intervention teachers who offer special supports to students beyond our regular classroom teachers. So that is an example. Or offering professional development would be another thing that some of our consultants to address certain topics in our school improvement plans would be able to be funded out of the grant funds. But anything that we apply for has to be approved by the Agency of Education and according to new agency regulations for Every Student Succeeds Act. So it has gotten very challenging. But budget grants, or grant budgets, are also not flexible. I want you to know that. The strategies that we apply for are the only thing we may use the funds for. So in order to use the funds for anything else, we have to go through a whole amendment process that is like reapplying for the grant. So it's quite a complicated process. We cannot change a line item and move funds over to another line. We have to reapply to use the funds in a different way. So they're quite rigid in their use and only for their purpose that was applied for. And then another possible way, the question I believe was why are some of these funds unspent at the end of the year or where these figures came from in terms of allocations. And some of the ways that they can not be spent would be if we put staff salaries or special service providers in the grants in March or April, and we're not able to hire them because we didn't have the applicants or people were not available to hire for those positions, or even the months that we didn't hire them, the salaries wouldn't be spent. So any of those funds would be left in the balance of the grant. Or transportation at times can be more or less than what we have allocated, especially in our special education grants. And so there could be excess funds in those grants, in those grant areas. Or professional development, a lot of times we try to provide with in-house presenters instead of always hiring consultants, and in that way we can manage to save some of the funds, and those could look like excess. Some of our possible program expansions, and I'll let Wendy speak to that a bit, may not actually happen, like if we put in a grant that we want to start a new program in a new facility, and for reasons in planning or reasons in not finding space or changes in our needs, if that plan didn't go into place, those grant funds would be left in excess. Now, any of the...
Not lost.
Not lost, no, that was my next comment. Any of those funds that we have are rolled over to the following year. We have unspent, unexpended funds that roll over to the following year. And every year, as a matter of safeguarding all of the investments that we have, we try to hold over 10 to 15% of our funds so that when we find out the grant allocation amounts, we are fairly safeguarded that it will cover the contracts that we have for our interventionists and all of our staff, because we don't always know what the number will be, and so we have to try to look forward and anticipate that we will have enough funding for all of the staff members that are within the grant. Wendy? Did you have a question?
So you're saying that you hold some of this money over to go to the next year?
Yes, yeah,
To
and
cover-
for summer also, yeah.
And, but we have, in the past, I believe, we've actually reapplied and amended, have we not?
Oh, we do, yes, all the time.
Right.
Yeah.
So you could do that. I don't know what time frame it takes to do that too. But you have to have
We
a
do
plan in place to
continually,
use.
but we only
it.
like do it maybe twice or 3 times in a year because we just don't have the time to.
Because I know
within a year.
we made a push several years back under previous finance and business director
And
to get
we al-
more of these applied. So
We
get
almost always do,
coverage.
Ray, because in September is really when we find out what are our unexpended funds from the previous year and what is available to spend. So at that time, we then almost write a new grant in September or October when we actually know what the figures will be. And I just finished one just yesterday. It was
Which I saw
approved,
today.
right? So I just did it.
So it's fair to say that this is ongoing and they're rolling
Always,
out always?
yes.
Okay.
So the question really is about the amount of the surplus, the amount of the difference here.
Right.
And can you actually account for why that difference is the way it is? Because this doesn't actually account for it. It's a general explanation of the system, but it doesn't account for why the difference is almost 950, is it, thousand?
Oh, I would, Wendy had some
I do have
rather
some.
major expenses. I think that this really only shows about a, as I said, 10 to 15% for the title funds, because that's what we need to hold over.
And
Yeah, but most of the surplus or the difference is in the title funds, right?
And I can say, just to answer your question, we can account for it. I can go through this, and I could go through line by line with you and say, for the salaries for the speech and language pathologist for extended year services, we had a leftover balance of $248.08. Because during this time of the speech and language services with extended year service, we had a couple of students who didn't require the amount of service that we projected at the beginning of summer, so we didn't use all of those funds. So we can definitely go through line by line and say exactly the things that we did not expend money that we had allocated
Yeah,
for the strategies we had
I'm not
written.
expecting you to do that.
But one of your biggest line items.
Right, and that's what I was gonna talk about. Some of the biggest line items, I've been talking about for a number of years, expanding a program here in Bennington for more trauma and more mental health services. We send a lot of students to out-of-district placements, and this has been a huge goal of mine. We had allocated a large amount of money, around $200,000 to do that for this school year. We could not find an appropriate building. We were struggling with getting we were trying to make a partnership with United Counseling to have more clinicians, because that's part of the trauma-sensitive environment. We struggled to get a couple of clinicians in the buildings at the elementary level, so we were struggling to look at that idea. That's one of those services that you don't go into it with halfway done, because it'll be a failure. It'll be a failure for the students, it'll be a failure for the program, and we don't want failures for those students, some of our most needy students. So that was around $200,000 that we had allocated monies for in that grant, written strategies for, that did not get expended. So there are a number of things along that matter. I had written a strategy for some transportation for a student to an out-of-district placement that did not come, left, I think, the second week of school, so we had that money. One of the things on your consent agenda tonight was for the paraprofessional at Molly Stark. During the course of the year, this is also why we save a little money back, because when things like this come up, I don't want to come back to your individual boards and say, hey, I need another pair to provide for this student who has come in, or we've got a student who needs some equipment. We try to have those things so we don't constantly come to your individual boards. So that's a use of those funds. So I think that can explain some of the things, and I would be glad to speak to you individually about any concerns that you had about some of the bigger ticket items that really were like transportation, some staffing. We had a contracted service that we had written a line item strategy for a occupational therapist, and we couldn't find an occupational therapist, we ended up going to a contracted service. And again, through that process, the amendment, we had to change things. We had to quickly write a contracted service so the line item for the budgeted person did not get expended. So that's some of the things that happen if you have to do things quickly and not go through that amendment process. The one other thing I did want to mention, that Relief was just saying, she just finished revising the grant that she was writing. I just finished revising, amending the grant that I had written. So at a certain time, about this time of year, they stopped taking amendments. So, yeah, today, they stopped taking amendments. So from here on out, we can't change anything. When we find things like, in near the end of May that, oh, we could use this for that, we can't make amendments anymore. We're not allowed to do that. So that's sometimes what happens is we find things and we could use some of that money, but we're not allowed to do it because of the guidelines around the state for the grant writing.
So that was gonna be sort of the question that I was gonna ask in terms of what happens when you need to spend more money than you have in the grant? Do you go back and rewrite?
You have to, or you just can't do it.
We can't do it. And so I didn't see, I couldn't tell from any of these that we had to do that for any of them. And don't know how often you would have to come out and rewrite.
We do it 2 or 3 times a year.
2 or 3 times at least.
This year is especially foreshortened because their grant platform is not working well, and they're switching over to a new grant platform, so they've asked us to all finish up really fast this year. So it's even more complicated. And it's been changing every year.
And the amendment process is not quick. So, for example, if I knew that I needed to spend $500 on a piece of equipment, I might not write an amendment for that because that locks my grant up until that one strategy is approved. So it may be locked up for 3 weeks before the Agency of Education can review it, have all the signatures and get it back. When I may know that there may be 2 or 3 things that I want to correct or look at, and then I can wait and write an amendment for 2 or 3 things, or 5 or 6 things, rather than just the one thing and have it locked up for a month.
Thanks.
Would you appreciate it being more flexible at that level?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we're talking federal government here. That
Well,
they
it's
make
also the state.
But
Yeah,
absolutely would appreciate it being more flexible.
but it has
Sounds
gotten,
like it could be useful.
it has gotten much more
Yes.
rigid over the past 2 years than it has ever been. We have to jump through a lot of hoops.
Yeah, we're getting ready to learn the new program.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that there are going to be some more hoops to jump through, but hopefully we'll be able to strategize and plan accordingly.
And I would also add that these grants are not just from me or just from Wendy. They come from all of the work that leaders and teachers do in their schools, and they let us know what is needed for professional development or to improve their students' performance. And then those are the items that go in as the strategies.
I had a question, although I think Dick was
Dick, did you have?
in line ahead of me.
No, it got answered, thank you.
So just, I think the question, the original question from last month was, why is there $1 million gap? It looks like we left $1 million on the table. And I think, Donna, you said at the very beginning, the number that is almost $5 million in this left-hand column is sort of arbitrary. That's what the state says you could get if you
Yes,
qualify for it.
Yes, that's the allocation,
And-
that's not
And
the
we can
grant
get,
award.
if we had a legitimate reason for spending that much and applied for it, we could get that much.
Correct.
But it
right.
sounds like you're saying
Maybe get that.
You may get that.
we didn't
Maybe
leave,
get that much.
we didn't
So-
leave $1 million on the table because we didn't have a legitimate request for that money.
Well, that's not quite true.
Not quite, no, no.
They've given
not
you all
quite.
sorts of reasons.
Yeah.
It's
So
act-
there's actually a third figure that's somewhere in between here that's actually what you could have
Yes, the
spent.
grant award would be what they approved for all of the strategies that we asked for.
And I think the nice thing to remember is, again, this isn't spend it or lose it.
Right.
This is, when those allocations are processed and expenditures are not made, that money does roll over. We have it the next year. We have it to put into new strategies. We have it to make considerations that if there's something that comes up over the course of the year that we didn't anticipate, we can utilize those services.
And we're always sort of thinking ahead too, because we don't know what the grant award amounts will be. So we are always kind of trying to anticipate ahead. Well, if we get a certain amount of funding, then we could align with these strategies, but it's always a little bit of magic to make it all work.
Then, for next year, could we have a list of how much was awarded? Because that seems to be the missing link between the amount that we've
So Randy, this report, this was in our annual report, but this is not generated by us, correct?
No, it is.
So, but where did these figures come from? Can you compile, because Renee compiled this list.
Yeah, my staff put it together, so I would have to double check. I mean, and they're all completely separate, so I would have to go back through and see if.
To see if that was possible to add that column.
Well, is
Yeah,
not
we
the
can certainly
expense item something that was spent, is expensed?
Yes.
Yeah, so the question was,
No,
But it's
the
not
question, the
equal to
question
the
was,
total grant awarded.
did we, the amount that we got approved for, I know we got approved for that, but how much do we need out of that amount?
You didn't get approved for that.
No, we got approved for the amount, well,
You didn't
we,
get approved for that.
I
That
know.
was available.
it's
Approved.
approved to be available,
Approved
right.
is not on here.
I understand.
John, I would rather have the people that have to deal with this grant give those answers. You heard what John said. The question is what was approved and what was expended? Can you answer that question? When we look at these amounts, I assume when somebody says that the available amount, I'll take Title I, is $2,527,000 and we only spent $2,192,000. We wrote the items enough to get the 192, or did we write it for even more than that and it just didn't get spent?
It probably was written for more and didn't get spent because of all the things we said. If we don't hire a person in it, or not able to hire a person and their 3-month salary, that 3-month salary.
And you underspend by at least 10 to 15% to
Yes.
give you that.
Right.
Yeah.
that-
And
Not carryover.
Right, and I don't know when, any figures that you get for expended or, they're also spent on calendar dates. So at any certain date that you take a picture, I don't know if that is the date that it actually needed to be expended or not. Because some of the grants have different dates where you can
Well,
spend it.
I'll ask the fiscal year 2017, what dates are they talking?
I don't know. I don't know where
July
these came from.
1 to June 30.
All right, so this is from last July 1 to June 30th of this year.
So I think one of the important things to remember is you're always going to see probably a little bit of money left on the table.
Yeah.
Because we do underspend to make sure that we have a little bit of carryover because we don't know what we're going to get the next year. And if we have a number of people in that grant, we don't want to have the possibility of losing those needed positions and then having to come to the individual boards and say, we've got 15 people that we don't have money for in this grant anymore, we need you guys to pick them up. You know, so you always are gonna see that little bit of money
And then
on the
hiring new
table.
personnel, you don't know what step
Right.
or column you're
No.
gonna bring them in at, or benefit package they're going to
Well, I think
qualify for.
the whole question, from what I saw, was, is the amount that it looks like was left on a table. But in reality, what I'm hearing is that based on our knowledge at the time, we're asking for certain grants and certain amounts of money based on our needs through that process.
Correct.
So, and from what I'm hearing is you're actually gaming that a little bit by adding a little more than what you think when you're asking for the grant, because you don't know what's really gonna happen.
Right. And
So-
We write it as best we can, but it's like any budget, whether it actually turns out that way by the end of the year. And it's very difficult to change the figures once they're.
Well, and I would think, having done grants myself, you can't game the system much, or otherwise they won't give you the next grant because you haven't spent it.
That's right,
Right.
and that too.
So That's the piece I see. So to me, and I know they're not easy, and I thank you guys for all the hard work doing that, others that help you. But I guess if they're offering us that much money, and if there is as much need as I hear out there for this type of work, we need to make sure that others on the staff that think they feel more need are letting you know so you can apply and ask for grants.
And that's what we do, although staffing has been very difficult for the past few years because the funding is not stable, and we don't know what this federal government is doing with their education funds. So we have really not added a lot of staff because it's very insecure right now.
And I just have one last comment. It's not that, so I have $1 million, I can just spend it any way that I want to, especially like with some of the grants. You have to spend it on very specific items. It's not like I can walk into a school and say, oh, wow, we need a new, intercom system. My grants won't allow me to spend it on those things. I have to, they're very dictated about or very prescriptive about how you spend those funds. Not only in the strategies we write, but just in the general direction that you go.
Other questions? Go ahead.
I'm still trying to put this through my head. Say this Title I, Part A, the first one. You were awarded the amount that you have here, correct?
Allocated.
Allocated, right.
That's not the grant award.
Right. But then you put in for the grant award, and then you're awarded so much off of this allocation.
Yes.
And then your expenses come off of that. What I was asking for was, what, of that, how much were we allocated off of the amount that we're granted?
The
How
grant award?
Yeah, how much we were awarded off of that amount that's here, that's allocated. I think that would be a good,
Somewhere in between those two numbers.
somewhere in between, that's what I'm asking
That's
for.
what Renee is saying, that for next year's report, she can work with her
Yeah.
staff to try and identify
Yeah.
what that number.
That's what I'm saying, is that it would be a lot easier to understand if you had that, another line in there that says that.
And the award amount changes with every amendment, so
Yep.
that is also.
Well, that
So it's
changes,
only gonna be a
yes,
snapshot of the day that
Yeah.
that was written.
yeah.
And I'm trying to grasp all what's going on here. With the awarded amount, from what I understood, you can get awarded this amount, but a percentage of that might actually carry over to the next year,
Yes.
even though it's not spent.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So when you see an awarded amount that's 200,000 or 300,000 more than what you've actually spent,
We
there's
even,
reason.
But
at
but
the end of the year, we get unexpended, rolls over, and there is even a category called unallocated. So if the state had some money left over in their title federal funds, they will then allocate the balance of whatever was left to all the schools. So even then, we think we know what the allocation amount is, and during the year, the allocation amount can change.
Yeah, I understand, it's just a snapshot, right then, and this should have a date on it, basically, of when it was.
All right, next thing in my report? Good?
That's it.
Nelson?
You're all set?
Okay,
All right.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Next thing, this is next year's school calendar I'm passing out. Let me explain the process. So I have to set a school calendar with the area superintendents, a regional calendar around the tech center, because the students at the tech center, this is by Vermont statute.
You've already
so
got the purposes.
the tech students, the whole idea is that Arlington has a different week's vacation than we have, or we have a different style of school than they do. The students miss out at the tech center, so, or they could actually end up in the tech center for 2 weeks in a row, their vacation week and our vacation. So we consult with the Arlington superintendent, the superintendent at the CDC, and generate a regional calendar, and that is what you have before you. I need to keep a copy for myself, I'll pass it out. That's all right.
I can share.
So we have to submit this to the Secretary of Education by April 1st. And so we also met with the Teachers Association, reviewed the calendar with them, which we do yearly, and then I bring it to you. You don't actually, vote on it, but I want you to be aware of it. You'll note that we go back before Labor Day this year, which is traditionally when we do. We did not go back before Labor Day this year because of the BSD construction project, giving them an extra week to do that. We did make a change on the back end of the calendar on June. You'll see that we traditionally build in 5 snow days. We're not wording it that way this time, so that as we use more and more snow days, people understand that trying to make it a little clearer to people that the last day of school is not etched in stone. It can vary. So that brings me to the next thing I want to talk about.
Can I just ask a question on that? Just curious, it seems like a change for this year, but why do the 9th graders go back? Why is the 10th through 12th?
So that started this year. That was a request from the high school that they do a 9th grade orientation, so just 9th graders.
Okay, that makes sense.
And if I brought in the 9th graders on a special day, there would be a salary, a cost associated with that than just doing that. So they actually did it this year, next year will be the second year, and the high school reported that did work well for getting them in there.
Cool.
Jim, is this the final version?
Yes, yeah, it's like version 6, but it is the final one. Yeah, so. Any other questions on calendar before I talk about snow days? So we've had 7 delays, 9 closings, 1 early release. So where does that put us? I'm waiting to the April meetings, but what I anticipate doing, and I'm pretty confident, that I will be asking the boards at their April meetings to allow the last day of school for students to be Friday, June 22nd. That'll put all students in school for 177 days, except for the middle school, because they had 1 extra day for a burst pipe, which everybody else was in school. They'll have 176 student days. The law requires 175, so we'll make the student days. The staff will still work the required days. They have to work those days so that we can pay them their full salary. So they will actually have 4 in-service days the following week. And I've had, again, meetings with the association on what those days may look like. Yesterday we had a meeting with the principals and the administrators to begin to plan what we'll do for professional learning on those days. It's valuable time and it doesn't impact the students. So I'll be at the April meeting, just wanted to completely get out of March. I mean, if you listen to the weather report, I was concerned that I might have been calling it a delay this morning if you went by what some people were reporting last night. But luckily the road surfaces were warm enough that that didn't happen. So I wanted to share with you, oh no, something fell off. I got a card from the students in Woodford about snow days. And I did tell them that I would read this. Dear Superintendent Culkey, we have about 4 feet of snow at the top of the mountain, and it's still snowing. We know it's difficult to call off school and want you to know we understand your problem and we feel bad about it. It's a very hard job. We want you to know that we're willing to get to school in the snow and have several ways to do so. And this is from Ayla. I will get there on my horse. Allie, I will ski to school. Mason, I will get to school in a plow truck. I didn't go to meet these students. He told me his father is the plow driver. Chloe said, I will take my 4-wheeler. Hayden said he will drive his snowmobile. Kyle said he will hike to school. Sid said he will snowshoe. And Michael said, I will take my sled because it's all downhill. So thank you for keeping us safe and always trying to make the best of the snow prediction. Sincerely, the Woodford Hollow students grades 4 and 5. So I thank them for their suggestions. And I did promise them when I met with them that I would share it with you. It is, it's been a difficult winter as far as that goes, because we want to get the required number of days in as quickly as possible, because education days late in June are not very productive, but we also want to make sure everybody's safe. And I may not have gotten the call correct every time, but we try and do the best we can, and it seems the students in Woodford understand that, so thank you. We are attempting to do a workshop, a new board workshop. We are proposed to do it April 12th at central office, starting at 5 o'clock. We have, in all the boards this year, we have 3 new board members, a smaller class than last year. Once we confirm that, we will open it up to any other board member. Once we confirm that we're going to have all 3 new board members there, we'll open up, and the agenda last year where all the administrators were there, and they gave, mini presentations on everything from special ed, early childhood, how budgeting works. HR made presentations, contracts were reviewed, things like that. So some of you did go through that last year. So that's April 12th, 5 o'clock, if we get confirmation that everybody's there. And lastly, now that you've elected the new board chair, I get to present you with the newest edition of the Vermont State Law Book, and that concludes my report. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a comment. Being that the SVSU board is really responsible for K through 12 grades, I would like to sort of see you report a little bit on some of the issues that we might be facing with the other boards. I know there's some hiring issues going on with some schools, and there's other things, just so that we all are on the same page, understanding all those things you have to do.
I often talk about it. I look at my calendar and what I go through in the day, and so much of what I do during the day, particularly around personnel matters, I don't blame everyone. What does he do all day? And there are things that I really can't discuss, but we can add that to future agenda, not necessarily what I'm doing during the day, but what you just asked about, an overview.
Yeah,
what I'm seeing as issues in other schools that we're dealing with.
Yeah, and just in general, that what I'm looking at, I know there's a hiring process going on for the high school, for one of those other schools as well, in the process.
We have 2 searches going on.
Yeah, and that's the sort of thing I guess I would have you report, because I know personnel you can't, but just general, that you got a principal you need to hire, there's a vice principal.
And we also have a search. They actually met tonight for the activities director at the high school. My understanding is they had 33 applications for that position. And the high school principal search, they're bringing in candidates that hopefully will become finalists. They're doing that next week. They've already done first round. I know some of you are on that committee. And the hope is that in early May, the high school should be ready to hire a principal, probably not by their April meeting, since they're bringing in kids. They had hoped to do it this week, but not all were available to do it this week, so that'll happen next week. And then still other hiring process. So I'll be happy to formalize that into an update for.
Yeah, well, we all get to read things in the paper all the time, and we know what the paper's like. So it's better sometimes that we're hearing it from you that are sitting on the front line, just sort of some of the things that are going on, just what I'm thinking, and the people out there can hear at the same time. So that's really what I'm thinking of, it's sort of like we bring the person in when we're talking about how we're going to deal with safety and active shooters and so forth. But let's do the same with the other issues that seem to be hitting the paper all the time, instead of us, going through the warrants, doing our thing that we need to do, but at the same time, let's feel more part of the whole, because that's what we're responsible for, is the K through 12. So.
Jim, sorry, just going back to this year and snow days and the end of the year. I guess to Nelson's point that we're in charge of all K through 12 students. Are the Bennington schools going to be open longer than?
No, so
I understood
that was
an
actually
issue.
incorrect information. Everyone started the same day, and I was even confused myself as the year goes. We had it lined up for them to start 5 days later than everybody else, and then the contractor finished up earlier, and we cut down on the preparation days that the BSD teachers had to set up. So they will be in the same amount of day, even though, originally I I was counting wrong, thinking in my mind, they went back 5 days later than everybody, actually, everybody went 5 days. And the contingency was for the additional 5 days, which, somewhere early in August, the contractor let us know he didn't think he was gonna need. So we're good. The only ones will be less is the middle school, because they were out of date with the ruptured heating pipes.
Okay. Other,
Hey Jim, that conference call with Rebecca, how soon do you
Yeah.
want to think about
It's
that?
good, thanks for bringing that up. So you know, we attempt next Thursday, with different staggered times in the afternoon, we're half an hour conversations with the Secretary of Education, to discuss, review everyone's every board that filed, a Section 9 report under Act 46. So I am going to the All Superintendent's meeting tomorrow in Barry, and Rebecca is the keynote speaker. So hopefully there'll be some clarification on whether those meetings will take place. The debt, even though with the resignation of Secretary of Education, those reports are still, the timeline is still ongoing. So at this time I don't know. Hopefully by the end of the day tomorrow, we'll be able to send out an email to the boards that are involved in that, on whether those meetings will take place or whether they're going to be rescheduled until the state knows who the interim Secretary of Education is going to be.
any other questions?
Yeah, back to that question on the meeting. Initially, it was, our meeting was at 1 o'clock and then changed to 1:30. Did it change to 1:30 or was that a?
I don't have the list in front of me.
Because the first list I had, it was at 1 o'clock, and the second list I had, it was at 1:30.
Let me check the calendar.
That was one.
1:30 was the second one that came out, yeah.
So I have Bennington from 1 to 1:30, which would be Bennington, Woodford, and Shaftesbury would be
Yes.
1 to 1:30.
But the last,
Carmel is 2 to 2:30.
the last one that came out said it started at 1:30.
Yeah.
They moved.
It probably, they're
Well, then he's
half-hour
telling-
meetings with a
then
half
he-
hour in between.
And then he's telling me it started, you gotta, because the one we got, it said it started at 1:30, but you just said it was starting at 1.
That's what I have, yeah.
Yeah,
That's
Yeah.
so we may need a clarification on it, when you get done with the other.
When we see
Yeah.
if it's actually going to take place, so,
Then we can click.
yeah, okay.
Other questions? None? Okay. I'm gonna make mine quick. As I stated earlier, I'll be doing the appointments and getting them out before our next meeting. Feel free to email me with the same email you were using last year, and let me know if you're interested in any of them. And if you aren't, I still might appoint you. And that's it. Other,
I got,
go ahead.
well, I forgot on the policy to say that we have a meeting scheduled for April 2nd. And at 4:30 at central office, an agenda has already been set. And we met today to get the agenda set. What I wanted everybody to know that if the boards hadn't met, the old members still should be coming to the meeting. And so we asked this
Because
secretary.
the boards have
to
done,
send-
but most have done exactly what Nelson has done. They won't announce who is going to be on those committees until their April meeting. So what you're saying is, if you were the current one, you should still attend.
Right, and we'll be asking all of the individual board districts to actually send their members as opposed to having to be sent from here to that, along that line. So that's April 2, 2018 at 4:30 at central office. One last thing, and it's too bad, under the FYI, you had student enrollment. And I had a magazine, and I don't know where I got it from, but it was good to see information on this district in terms of the enrollment of students compared to a bunch of the other schools in Massachusetts and around, and some others in Vermont. I hate to say it, my grandbaby got the paper, the book, and just ripped it. And I couldn't. But it was good to see information from this district compared with other schools out there. Okay, that's it for
What are
me.
you talking about?
In the Berkshire magazine,
Oh, Berkshire, there's.
right, they had Mount Anthony's and enrollment data from this district compared to
yeah,
other schools
I saw that.
around. You saw it?
Attendance data was?
Yeah, the attendance data.
Yeah.
So you saw it. Okay, you want to fill us in?
I think it was an insert in the banner and probably the Berkshire Eagle too.
It was the
maybe
Berkshire
2 or 3
Eagle.
weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was good to see that data that we generate is out there and being compared to other
Where were
schools
we
and
in
districts.
comparison? Where were we in comparison? Did you take note?
We didn't look too bad in terms of the attendance records for the high school along that line. So compared to the other schools,
I noticed that the attendance percentage tends to drop over the year. Is that customary?
at the end of the year is what. At the end of the year.
No, I mean, it shows months through January, I believe. This FYI. And it shows various range of drop from the original September opening date.
In the middle of winter, I think cold and flu season plays a huge role
Yep.
in that. I think you'll see the staff attendance drop as well as they come down with what the kids are walking through the door. I know that Monument's attendance was
my
pretty
years
low.
of education, I've never seen June attendance higher than September.
Yeah.
Right, and that's always that
So,
low.
and it goes down monthly according to the chart.
My issue has to do with weapons. I am a veteran that has been exposed to possibly more weapons and the effects of those weapons than maybe anybody else in this room. I would like nobody in our school system to have to be exposed to anything close to that. And to that end, I would like to introduce as a motion a statement from this board. So my motion would read, the Southwest Vermont Supervisory Union and its member school districts value the work performed every day by all personnel, including teachers. School personnel consistently perform tasks beyond their job descriptions. The SVSU will not ask these personnel to accept the additional responsibility to carry arms. The SVSU will not support arming teachers, volunteers, or other school personnel. While the Gun-Free Schools Act discourages weapons in the school environment, it does allow for exceptions under certain conditions. The SVSU will acknowledge an exception only for trained police officers and will comply with the directives in our policy 5089, weapons prohibition other than students. That is a motion I would like to
I'll second it.
I second that too.
Leon?
The only thing that I need to say is that this is an action that you're asking the board to take when we didn't have it on the agenda. And I caution us about doing it so that we won't get ourselves in trouble with the people of the media or the public that may say they didn't have a chance to say anything concerning that, and yet we brought it up and asked for a motion and wanted to take a vote on it. And I would hate to see us do that, that's all.
I would be glad to.
It's appropriate because it's under us.
So you can propose
I
that
could
it goes
restate
on the
this.
agenda for a
Right.
full meeting.
That's all.
All it is
That
is
is
a
fine
forming
with me,
policy.
as long as
So
you-
You're withdrawing your motion
I will withdraw
table it for the
the motion then, and ask
So
that
you
it be put on the
could
next
submit it in
agenda.
advance and we could put it in the packet so
Right.
everyone
Is
can
it,
read
is it in any way contrary to policies we already have?
No,
It's
but,
affirming them.
yes, but my concern is that there's also a move out there to do just the opposite.
Right.
But I take exception to one thing you said. I also served.
Yes.
And I handle them all too.
I said perhaps, John, I didn't mean to exclude anybody, so I will
Well-
send it for the next agenda.
Okay, so you'll move it to the next agenda so it can be in the packet. And if anybody wishes, they can,
I will withdraw it as a motion.
Yeah.
okay?
Forward that to Karen and then she can make sure it gets printed in the packet.
I only had two things to add. additionally, I agree with Dick Francis' motion. However, we represent our individual boards, and so for us to agree on behalf of our boards before our boards have had an opportunity to have it as an agenda item and to have voted on it as an agenda item, I don't think it's appropriate for us, even though I do agree with you, for us to vote on behalf of our board
So it may be,
as we are representatives of our boards.
it could be a two-step process where at next month's meeting, he proposes that it's brought
To all the boards.
to all the boards. You all endorse that it's brought, and then you bring it
Right.
to your individual boards. and-
Or the other way is to follow the standard rules we always have and make it be a policy. And then it gets run by every board, and every board signs off on it, and then we move it that way. That a policy based teachers don't carry on.
I think we could have a motion and approve to have it go to a policy committee tonight,
Right.
because then it would go to each board.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
But doesn't that take a while? I think you
Yes,
wanted to
it
get out
takes a
there
while.
quicker than, so could we do
It
both?
takes 6 months.
Yeah, could we
I am
do,
concerned.
yes, could we do both? Make that, have it voted on by all, bring it to the boards. Next month, we vote on whether we want to bring it to the boards. We bring it to the boards vote one way or the other. And then we put it out there as our statement, and then put it to policy as well.
Refer to the policy.
Yeah, we can take the policy, that could be added to the agenda. We've already got set for this, for April, but May could include policy for review 5089, and we can consider those things.
In order to expedite as well, maybe you could email the verbiage to each of the board chairs prior to their April meetings, and then it could be brought up at the April meetings as a motion on the agenda and as a
If he
motion.
sends it to Karen and I, then we can distribute all the chairs and keep it, have all of that, and,
And that would get it in motion faster.
I'll be glad to work with that. My only concern was that if the legislature decides to make any statements as they're prone to do, without thinking sometimes, they shouldn't be on the record, should it? We want to be out front to say that we have a thought.
I have no trouble with saying that sometimes the legislature might enact something that we don't feel comfortable with. And that could be on the record.
I will pass that.
And basically, I know they're passing some things to do with guns currently, so I'm not aware of them doing anything with arming teachers in this state, but they are elsewhere, so. Okay, enough on that topic?
All right.
No more said? Okay, there is some for information items that were attached for you to look at, and now we need an executive session. I'll ask the question, are we gonna make a decision when we come out on this?
possibly.
All right, so I would ask people that wish to remain, stay. No move. I got a motion to go into executive session. Got a second? The executive session is to do with 1C arbitration or mediation, 3 the appointment or employment or evaluation of a public officer or employee, provided that the public body shall make a final decision to hire or appoint a public officer or employee in an open meeting and shall explain the reasons for his final decision during the open meeting. I'm reading that off because some people, when we say executive session, we haven't been stating what we're going in for, and we need to make it clear. Okay, I got a motion, got a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Let's go.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion to adjourn.
At what, 8:29 was that?
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you for coming.